Hello my friends! I'm not gonna make a grandiose intro for this video, I'm just here to make a tier list of all the heroes in Age of Mythology Retold. Looking at these icons though, I can say that there are a lot more heroes in this game than I thought. Don't worry though, I'll try to be quick. And that's what she said. First up, we have Mr. Jason Derulo. Now, Mr. Jason really doesn't have much going for him except the fact that he costs very little. And that's about it. However, he can hold his own in a fight, so I can't really put him at the very bottom, but he's gonna be very close to that bottom. I'm gonna give him a C.
Jason, I don't understand.
Next up, Heracles. Now, he can do a little bit more than Mr. Jason, but he also isn't the strongest hero the Greeks have to offer. But since he does feel a tier above Jason, I'm gonna put him a literal tier above Jason. B tier. Next up, we have Bellerophon, or however you read that, I'm not sure. The thing about him though, you won't really have the time to say his name, because he's gonna kill you much sooner than that. This guy can jump on you, and when he does jump on you, he really jumps on you. He does insane damage with the jump. But even if he doesn't one-shot them, he easily finishes them off. He's so strong. I'm gonna put him in A tier. Next up, Achilles. Well, I'm gonna say the same thing I said for Heracles. He is strong, he can put on a good fight, but there are stronger heroes than him. So I'm gonna give him the same tier as Heracles, B tier. And talking about stronger heroes, we have Perseus. Now this guy's ability actually recharges pretty quickly, so you can use him in the backline and snipe stuff, do some damage, and then put him in the back and snipe stuff again. He is so strong, like if you can defend him well, he can be the strongest unit in the game. Especially if the enemy has a bunch of overpowered myth units in their army. However, I think he's the strongest hero we had so far, but I'm not gonna give him an S tier. Because the S tier is reserved for basically gods and demigods. But this guy is the closest to an S tier anyone has ever gotten, so keep that in mind, Perseus. A tier. Next up, we have Theseus. Now, if you don't know, this is the guy who killed the Minotaur in the labyrinth. And that's about the only thing he can do. He can kill a Minotaur, and that's it. But he can't really do much more than that, so I'm gonna give him a C. Next up, Atalanta. She's okay, I guess. Honestly, I have a much lower opinion of her than of Heracles and Achilles, but I'm still gonna put her in the same tier as them. B tier. Next up, Hippolyta. Now, the good thing about her, she's a hero archer, so she's really hard to reach and she can do a lot of damage to your myth units. The bad thing about her, she really doesn't do that much damage in general. If you can keep her in a fight long enough, she can do some damage, but I'm not too impressed with her either. So I'm gonna give her a B tier. Next up, Polyphemus. Now this guy was the unit in the original. He was insane in the original. Like anything he touched, he literally pulverized. Like I would just focus this guy down to get rid of him as quickly as possible, just so he doesn't obliterate me, you know what I mean? Here I do have a feeling that they've tuned him down a bit. He can slam the ground and knock them away, but I do generally feel he is weaker than he was in the original. That being said, he is still a really strong unit. And really strong units get Ace. Next up, we have the Argo. Better known as the only ship hero in the game. And yeah, fun fact, if you didn't know, there is a ship hero in the game. Now, the Argo is really cool. It can transport units and it can literally kill a bunch of ships. And if they're like sea hydras or scyllas or whatever, if they're like myth units in the sea, well, they aren't gonna be around much longer. This guy does a lot of damage to myth units. And he can even kill ships on his own. Honestly, I don't really know what to do with him. On one hand, he's a ship hero, and that's so cool. On the other hand, he is a ship hero, so he really doesn't have that cool of a capability as land heroes do. Still though, he is pretty strong, so I guess I'll give him an A tier, okay? I really like Mr. Argo. And now we have arrived at the campaign Greek heroes. Next up, we have our Arkantos. He is the man in the original campaign. And what does the man do? The man doubles the attack of every unit around him. Like, that's his ability. He doubles the attack. And not for a short time either, by the way. He's really strong. Like, on his own, he's okay. But in a group, he is so overpowered. Honestly, I would be inclined to give him an S tier for that. However, I do have God Arkantos on this list as well, so it would be a bit dumb if they are both on the same tier, so the basic Arkantos is getting the basic A tier. Next up, we have Ajax. Now, there are 3 heroes in the campaign who actually do appear in Skirmish and Multiplayer. But in Skirmish and Multiplayer, well, those versions of the units are weaker. So I'm just gonna rate the campaign versions who are a lot stronger. Ajax is one of them. Now, he has this shield bash ability that does a bunch of damage. He doesn't have too much else going on, but that shield bash really bashes stuff, if you know what I mean. And this guy does do a lot of damage, but he still didn't convince me enough to give him an A tier, so I'm gonna give him a B tier. Next up, we have Agamemnon. Now that's the guy who led the attack against the Trojans. Emphasis on the lead, not emphasis on the attack. And you can see that by his abilities, which don't exist. This guy is really weak. He's one of those do as I say, not as I do kind of leaders, because, well, if he wanted others to be like him, then others would be very, very weak. That is why he's going to be my first D tier on this list. Next up, we have Odysseus. You have different versions of him in the campaign and multiplayer. The campaign version shoots a piercing arrow, and that's it. He really doesn't do that much damage, honestly. I did expect a little bit more of him. You know what? I'm gonna put him in the same tier as Ajax, but honestly, I do believe he's a bit weaker than him. But okay, B tier. Next up, we have Chiron. He's the last hero who is different in multiplayer and the campaign. The campaign hero has the ability to shoot multiple arrows at a target. Now, I feel this is a lot stronger than the piercing arrow, however, that does not mean he managed to convince me to put him in A tier. Sorry Centaur, but you're getting a B treatment. Next up, Theocrat. He appears on the first level of the game. You can't really play him, but he does count as a hero. Now, when I said you can't really play him, I meant you can't really play him legitimately. However, there is one little cheat that randomly gives you ownership of certain units on the map. And if you're lucky, you can get to control him. Lucky being in quotation marks here though. This guy is weak. He is just a for show unit, and you can see it in his combat abilities, or lack thereof. So yeah, there isn't much I can do here, but give him a D tier. Next up, we have Circe. You know that pig level in the campaign? Well, she's the one who turns you into a pig, so she does get bonus points for that. And if you manage to damage her fortress enough, she will also grace you with her presence. And her presence sure is something. When she appears, she turns a bunch of your units into pigs, and then she also has a lightning staff she uses to, well, bestow lightning upon you. She does a lot of damage, man. And she is so cool. Now, she isn't cool enough to be a god tier, but she comes pretty close to it, so I'm gonna give her an A. Next up, we have the main villain of the game, Gargarensis. Now, this guy is a Cyclops hero, and he has Cyclops abilities. He can throw people into oblivion. Now, combine that with a huge health pool and a bunch of damage, and you have a unit that is really powerful. It's too bad you only get to play him on one level, but that just makes the one level a lot more memorable. And that good memory is why I'm gonna give him an A. Next up, we have Arkantos, but the blessed god version of him you get at the last level of the campaign. And man is he strong. He can like one-shot literally every unit in the game. And his special ability basically kills everyone who is unfortunate enough to be around him. So he also has that going for him. And also don't forget the insane health regen on this guy. So not only does he obliterate everything, he also is basically immortal. So what else could I give this guy than an S? Next up, the Egyptians. We're gonna start with the priest. The most basic hero units the Egyptians have. But just because he's basic doesn't mean he's weak. This guy can be used for scouting, defending, healing, and fighting myth units. Plus, he gets more powerful with each age. In the last age, he has like huge damage and huge range, so he becomes actually pretty strong. If you've got a group of these guys, they can like annihilate everything, to be honest. But if you have one guy, well, he does have a bunch of utility, and he can heal units, and he does solid damage, so I'm gonna put him in C tier. Next up, we have the Pharaoh. Now, I'm not really sure what to do with this guy. On one hand, his combat capabilities are, well, a little bit stronger than a priest, and he can also heal like a priest. However, he does have one thing going for him. He can bless monuments, and they can like bless an area around him. So basically, he alone can bless a bunch of buildings, which is pretty cool. I don't know, I feel a bit bad not giving such an important Egyptian unit an A. However, I don't think he's as strong as Polyphemus and Perseus and Gargarensis and stuff like that, so I guess B tier is the only thing I can do here. Sorry, Pharaoh. Next up, we have another demigod, Son of Osiris. Now, this guy can do the same thing as a Pharaoh with one crucial difference. He can chain lightning you into oblivion. Plus, he has a bunch more health. But the chain lightning, man, it's insane. This guy is 100% deadly. Not just against myth units, against units. Period. Now, he might not be as strong as a demigod or Kentos, however, this guy can be built multiple times. It does cost a bunch of favor to do it, but you can have multiple Sons of Osiris, and that's just insane, to be honest. Definitely S tier worthy though. Next up, we have Amonra. Now she has been thoroughly changed from the original, and I'm pleased to say for the better. Let me tell you how she felt in the original. Now, imagine this. You attack an enemy with a huge army. Your heroes are of course part of that army. Amonra is one of those heroes. Now, you attack an enemy, and you manage to push them towards their city walls. You see the enemy is getting a bunch of reinforcements. What does Amonra do? She sees somebody over the fence and she jumps onto them. And then she gets killed on the other side of the fence, and she stays there dead for the remainder of the game. And you only get to save her when you get a huge force and you manage to bust through the enemy walls and kill them all. That's how it was to play with Amonra. In Retold, her jump does huge damage, both to the initial unit and to the units next to it. Plus, and get this, you can manually target the jump. So if you do accidentally get over the wall, you can simply jump to the other side. How cool of an idea is that, original game devs? This is a sincere question. How could you have made her so bad in the original? But okay. And with her manual jump, she can cheese 2 of the missions in the campaign even harder than she did before. Which is pretty hard to do, but she still managed to do it. So yeah, I have no choice but to give her Amonra, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I'm gonna give Amonra an A. Well done, Amonra. Next up, Amonra's greatest enemy, Kemsit. Now, this guy might be her greatest enemy, but I don't know why. This guy is so weak. He's a bad guy with a hood, so that's bonus points, but he literally has no special ability, and his health pool and attacks are miserable. But okay, he does do some damage, so I can't really put him in D tier, but he's gonna come pretty close to it. C tier. Next up, Setna. This is the priest that randomly appears in a couple of levels in the campaign, and just as random are his stats. He does okay damage, he has an okay health pool, so I guess I'm gonna put him in the okay tier, and that's the B tier. Next up, fairies. If you thought Setna was random, this guy is even more random. Now, he has a huge health pool of like 700 health, which is good, but his damage really isn't that great. Plus, he doesn't really do that much damage to myth units, at least not as much as a hero should. However, he does have a huge health pool, so I guess I'm gonna have to reward that with a B, I think. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Next up, Kamos, or as they call him in this game, Kamos. And this was the first and the last time I said that word. It's Kamos all the way. Now, he has a solid slash attack that does a lot of damage to one unit, but I don't know, man, I'm just not feeling it. He's also one of those guys that I don't think does too much damage, and he also doesn't do too much damage to myth units either. However, he is a cool Minotaur, so he does have that going for him. Plus, he also has a huge health pool, so I guess that's a B tier. Next up, Osiris himself. We had a son of Osiris, but this is the real deal, the real god. Now, this is a little bit of a cheat, and in more ways than one, to be honest. First of all, he's not really a regularly playable unit, but second of all, you have to use a cheat to get him. But if you do get him, if you do use the cheat, oh man, you are in for a world of hurt. He is a literal god, and he is not afraid to show it. He has huge chain lightning, does a bunch of damage, and is going to ruin your day completely. That guy's so cool, man. Again, he's a cheat, so I don't know. I'm not sure how valid it is to place him in a tier list like that, but he is a hero, technically, so it counts, I guess. So, S tier, obviously. And it's time for the Norse. First up, Hersir. Now, he's kinda in the same situation as the priest. He is not too powerful, but he does have a lot of things going for him. He generates favor faster than other units, plus, if you're playing Loki, this guy has a higher probability of spawning a myth unit, which is also pretty cool. But yeah, if I can compare him to a priest, I guess I'm gonna put him in the same tier as him. So, C tier. Next up, we have Godi. This is a new unit in Age of Mythology Retold. And boy is it a broken one. This guy is really cheap, actually. And you get a spear-throwing hero, who has quite solid range, actually. Now, if you make a bunch of these guys, especially if you have a solid front line, they can really mow through all the enemies. But on his own, I don't really know. I'm actually really tempted to put him in B tier, because he is so strong if you build a bunch of them, but I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna put him in C tier, but I will say I like them more than Hersir's. Next up, we have Heroes of Ragnarok. When you use the Ragnarok god power, every villager and dwarf turns into one of these guys. Now, the great thing about them is when you get them, you're usually gonna have a bunch of them. But like individually, one guy is not that strong, gonna be honest. So I guess I don't really have a choice here, do I? My hands are kinda tied, so I'm gonna have to put him in D tier. Next up, we have Gulin Bursty. Now, if you've watched my Myth Units video, you're gonna see that this guy appeared there as well. As I said there, this guy is a mythical boar, okay? So I put him there, but technically he is a hero. Like, it does say hero in brackets around his name. But everything I said on that list goes. This is the guy that you get from the Freyr god power, and man is he strong. He does get stronger the more ages you have, but at the height of his power, he is unstoppable. He can destroy whole armies by himself. That's why they only let you use him defensively and for a short period of time. But he is recastable, so keep that in mind. But yeah, this guy has the potential to destroy universes. And that's the grade he's gonna get. A universe-destroying S. Next up, Regenleaf. If you don't know, she's a spear-throwing Valkyrie from the campaign. And since she is a Valkyrie, she can heal your units, which is great. Now, I do have a particular feeling like she has been nerfed in Retold. However, I'm not sure. Maybe she was as weak in the original, but I just didn't pay too much attention to her. But here, she really doesn't feel that great. No, I'm pretty sure they nerfed her. Her attack does feel weaker here. But yeah, she is still a solid hero who can heal my units. So, I guess it's gonna have to be a B. Badumts. Next up, Brock. Now, Mr. Brock is much better at armor smithing than actually fighting. However, he can't stand his ground. He is not too great. In fact, he is very weak. But he is a dwarf, so it's kinda expected. That being said, he has one thing going for him, and one thing only, which is why I'm not gonna put him in D tier. And that is the fact that he can gather resources. He is a dwarf, so he's the best in mining, but he can gather everything, really. Plus, he can make like farms and houses and carts as well. Which is really cool for a hero, not gonna lie. So, like, if the enemy isn't attacking you or something, you can use him to mine resources. And that's why I'm gonna give him a C. Next up, Brock's brother Eitri. Literally the same thing I said for Brock goes for Eitri. But it's worth noting that he's the younger brother, so he has less combat experience, so his stats are a bit weaker. But they're basically the same as Brock's. So, for that reason, I'm gonna give him a C as well. Next up, we have the Full Stack Flag Bearer. Yeah, this is actually a hero in the campaign. Literally says a hero next to his name. But this guy actually has no attack, so there's really not much I can do here except give him a D tier. Next up, we have another hero that has no attack. However, this one is much different. Now, if you've played the campaign and have watched the cutscenes, so if you haven't skipped them, you will know that this guy is actually Loki, the god Loki himself. And he's like in disguise and wants to trick you and stuff like that. But I will repeat this. This guy is a god. His real power is manipulating people, but it's a god nonetheless. Now, out of all gods in all of mythologies, Loki is like my favorite god. So you have to keep that in mind. Because, well, he has no attack. But I'm totally being biased here. But I know you like Loki as well. Because literally everyone does. And that's why I'm gonna give him S tier. Don't at me, bro. And we have arrived at the Atlanteans. Every one of their infantry units can turn into heroes, including workers. So we're gonna start with Citizen Heroes. Now, Citizen Heroes are not the kind of hero you want to use in combat, though. The reason why you would turn citizens into heroes is because they can gather and work faster. And that's really strong. And I guess for that reason, I'm gonna give them a C. Next up, Murmillo Hero. Now, Mr. Murmillo Hero does okay damage, but he's really nothing that special, to be honest. I would say he does about as much damage as a Hero of Ragnarok, so I'm gonna have to put them in the same tier as a Hero of Ragnarok, so D tier. Next up, Catapeltes. These are anti-cavalry units, who I also do not have a high opinion of. Like, again, I would say this one basically has the same stats as a Hero of Ragnarok. So this one also goes into the D tier pile. But next up, we have the Destroyer. Now, the Destroyer basically doesn't live up to its name at all. He's not here to destroy stuff, okay? However, the thing he is really good at is the opposite of destroying. Defending. Like, this guy is basically unkillable. He feels so strong. His armor stats, his health stat, they feel really OP, man. He's usually strong against buildings, and I guess since he's a hero, he's strong against myth units. but I would say the strongest thing he is at is tanking damage, so I'm gonna put him in C tier. Next up, we have Contarius. Now, this is a fast horse guy who is good against ranged unit, so this is basically an anti-backline kind of unit. And I'm here for it, man. He is pretty cool, and pretty strong, honestly. I like him. I like him definitely more than Murmillo and whatever the anti-cavalry guy is called. So I guess I'm gonna put him in C tier as well. Next up, we have the Caro Ballista hero. Now, fun fact by Amon, in the original, this guy could not become a hero. This was the only quote-unquote infantry unit that couldn't be a hero. You know, on one side, that makes sense. This is basically a fat guy pulling a cart, you know? However, the fat guy pulling the cart, he does pull a punch, okay? He did in the original, I think he does even more so here. Like, this guy destroys. And I'm not even joking. This guy is so powerful. If you manage to put him in a backline and defend him, he can pull such a punch. And he isn't that expensive either, you know? So I guess for that reason, I'm actually gonna put him in B tier. Next up, we have the Arcus hero. Now, the Arcus hero also isn't that strong. However, I will say you can put this guy behind a wall and just target the enemy myth units, and they're gonna disappear. Especially if you have a group of these guys. I mean, this guy can do a lot of damage if you let him. If you defend him, if you have him in the backline, so I guess I'm gonna give him a C. Next up, we have a Turma hero. Now, Mr. Arcus was good against infantry in general. This guy is only good against archers. However, he does have solid range, and he has a horse, so he is pretty quick. So he does have that going for him. Also, I'm gonna say the same thing I said about the Arcus. If you have a couple of these guys standing behind a wall or something, the enemy is really not gonna have a good time, so I'm also going to give him a C. Next up, one of my favorite Atlantean units, a Fanatic. Now, this guy is good against anything his sword can touch. And since you turn him into a hero, he is good against myth units as well. But yeah, these guys are really strong actually. I don't remember them feeling this strong in the original, gonna be honest. But these guys can mow through enemies, not gonna lie. And I guess because of that, I'm gonna give him a B. Yeah, I think I will. And next up we have the Oracle hero. Now, they changed the favor system in this game from the original. Thank God they did, by the way. So now oracles generate favor. And if you turn them into a hero, they generate more favor, faster. Which is, you know, one might say this sounds pretty useful, and one would be correct. Oracle heroes are awesome. This guy has like a small attack or something, but you're not gonna make Oracle heroes because you want them to attack. You're gonna make them into a hero, and they're gonna stand around in one spot, and they're gonna do that for the rest of the game. And you're gonna love it. Same as with the Citizen, gonna be honest. C. Okay, and now we have the campaign heroes. First up, we have Caster. Now, I have thoroughly ignored young Caster because I hate him. Older Caster though, well, he is pretty good. However, I will say, they changed his ability compared to the original. In the original, he had like a knockback ability that dealt so much damage that enemies would instantly die. He wouldn't be able to knock them back because they would, well, be corpses, you know. Here they gave him an area of effect ability, and it really feels worse. So much worse than the original. And that's just because of the ability. The stats kind of feel the same. I guess it doesn't really matter though. Like, he had an insta-kill attack on any soldier, and that was so useful. And he doesn't anymore. He just doesn't feel that powerful. So for that reason, I guess I'm gonna have to give him a B. Next up, we have General Malages. If you played the Atlantean campaign in the original, I know you remember this guy. Because his level is one of the most overtuned levels in the entire campaign. In the original. Thankfully, it's much easier in this one. The good general himself has pretty solid stats actually. A huge health pool, solid damage, and he also summons reinforcements to him. I'm not sure if that's an ability or if that's like just scripted. It's probably scripted. Not that it matters though. His huge health pool and solid damage, plus the guy builds statues to himself, so, you know, if you have that much of an ego, you're getting an A, bro. Definitely. And last but not least, King Falstag. You'll probably remember him as the guy who can freeze the Titan. Now, his attacks are okay-ish, but he can take a lot of punishment, especially from a Titan. Like, the Titan does so little damage to him, it's not even worth discussing. However, if he is surrounded by a bunch of infantry, he can die quickly. But, I will say, I don't care if he can die quickly, I don't even care what his stats are. This guy can freeze a freaking Titan, okay? I was very close to putting him in God tier because of that, but I'm gonna put him in a more realistic A tier instead. And I guess that's it. Now, this is my third and last tier list for Age of Mythology Retold. I'm done with tier lists for now. Now, I am planning to make a huge review of every single campaign in Age of Mythology Retold, and well, you can tell me if you want to listen to that or not. If no one wants it, then I'm not gonna make it. Cause that's like 50 missions. It's gonna take me forever to edit those, by the way. But other than that, I guess that's it. I can only thank you for watching, and I guess I'll see you in the next challenge. Peace!
Carlos!